Actually, we are going to automatically stream this. So I think I'll do a quick introduction and we can get started then.
Have you put this anywhere on social media? Then I can retweet it. Is there
Uh,
anything?
I can give you the link.
Because I've been in like sessions all day today.
Okay.
So थोड़ा सा मेरा भागम भागी चल रहा था.
Yeah, posted on group chat. You can share that link.
This is the Zoom link, is it?
Yeah, I can also send you the Zoom link if you want to share the Zoom link directly. One sec. Yeah.
Let's share this on WhatsApp. Anybody wants to join. But we can start anytime.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, Yeah, hello everyone. This is the second Indic Forum event of this year. Before we talk about the event, I would like to let everyone know that we have launched our new. Okay. Hi everyone. This is the second Indic Forum event of this year. Before we talk about the event, I would like to let everyone know that we have launched our new revamped website. The link to our WhatsApp channel is on the homepage of the website. I request everyone to visit the website and follow the WhatsApp channel so that we can send you notifications for all our future events. And we have lots of events planned for this year. Also, we have a newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter and then you'll receive email updates for all the future events. Indic Forum is an independent, non-profit, non-political organization focused on giving platform to authors, intellectual, academicians, and experts in their field. We mostly focus on topics like Indology, history, culture, dharma, and related topics. Having said that, I would like to introduce our today's speaker, Ami Ganatraji. She's an alumna of Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, IMA. She has over 15 years of experience in business strategy and consulting. She has lived across many countries and has worked across many different sectors of the economy. In her personal life, she is a devout yoga practitioner and a certified yoga instructor. She's also a student of Sanskrit and Indian knowledge systems. She has authored two books and Mahabharata Unraveled, lesser known facets of a well known history, and Ramayana Unraveled, lesser known facets of Rishi Valmiki's epic. Um, Her books are not retellings of or reimaginations of Ramayana and Mahabharata, but rather an attempt to go back to the Ityasa and present the story, learnings, and nuances for what they are and make those epics accessible to all. I think Ramayana and Mahabharata have been very popular topics on Indic Forum so far, and we love to host people who talk about our Ityasa. And today she's going to talk about her book, Mahabharata Unraveled 2. The link to buy the book is on our event page as well as we'll put it on the chat. And having said that, please note that this event is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube and it will be posted on YouTube as well. Having said that, I give the floor to Amiji and she can continue.
So namaste. Very happy to be with all of you here. Um, Thank you for inviting me. So I was told I have some time to talk about what is the book about, and then maybe open it up for question and answers. So I'll keep it short. Mahabharat Unraveled. Let me just tell you briefly about uh, what is what is this book on Mahabharat, because there's so much written about Mahabharat anyways. So what does Mahabharat Unraveled do? Does it add to the crowd or does it bring anything different? Typically, a lot of what is written about Mahabharat is is fiction. People call it retelling, people call it their interpretation, but it is by and large fiction. Um, because there is so much fiction written about Mahabharat, one, and second, typically what we know about Mahabharat is based on the TV series that we've seen, and actually, third, some of the manyatas that have been in some parts of Indian society, that Mahabharat shouldn't be read. If you read the Mahabharat, ghar pe Mahabharat ho jayega. There are some who believe that as well, because of which we stopped reading our own text. So what has happened is a lot of what we think we know of Mahabharat is actually not what Ved Vyasji's Mahabharat actually is about. And because we learn Mahabharat not from the source but from fiction and all these places, what happens is there are a lot of confusions about various characters, about various actions, about various events, and it gets even trickier when these misunderstandings or wrong understandings, if I may, get imposed on us as our social narrative. Then what happens is we say, see, your society is about your society is all about misogyny. देखो द्रौपदी के साथ क्या हुआ. Your society is all about जातिवाद. देखो कर्ण के साथ क्या हुआ. So the problems of today get superimposed on our past, and then that past is again used to define us in a certain way, saying that this is exactly how you are. Now, what is happening is that, especially with most of you in US, you've seen this, how the caste narrative, how this Hindu bashing, what does it lead to? You've had states where caste has suddenly become a big issue. It's become a whip to whip the Hindus with, right? So that is happening. Hindu phobia, Hindu misia, if I may, is increasing rapidly. And our own people, our own children, they come back and they tell us, why should I worship Sri Ram? He was such a misogynist. Those values don't stand for today. Why should I even be a Hindu for that matter, right? Why can't I just be like everybody else? Why can't I just become a Christian or a Muslim? And we don't have questions for the questions that they ask. We don't have answers for the questions they ask us. It was not very different from me. I had also a lot of questions about the epics. At some point, I realized that if I want to know the answers, because many more often about Mahabharata, we are told that it's all gray. Every character is gray. Sometimes the villains look like the heroes and heroes look like the villains and whatnot, right? And no action, there is no white or black, it is all gray. Everybody is trying to break the rules, and even Krishna is always breaking the rules, and stuff like that gets told. So then the question I always had was, what is Dharma? What are our rishis even telling us about Dharma? Is it really all gray? Is there really no anchor that we have in what is right and wrong and how should things be? Or do end justify means, right? So what was it? What is our stand to that? I realized that if I needed answers for the questions I had, I will have to go back to the source. And what is the source? The source is Ved Vyasji's Mahabharata. Now, what people ask me is that, is there really a source? Is there really an original that we can go by? So, yes, there is. Yeah, there is something what we have from Ved Vyasji. And Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute has undertaken had undertaken, or the organization still exists. It took a 60-year effort where they collected various manuscripts of Ved Vyasji's Mahabharat from different parts of Bharatvarsha. Yeah. And then they did an exercise where they compared all these various manuscripts, and they came up with a critical edition. So what it means is that if there are, say, 100 manuscripts, of which 99 agree on the story, and in the 100th manuscript, there is a little variation. So then, obviously, common sense would say that 99, which have, if they are consistent, then you will go with the 99 manuscripts. The difference in the 100 could be some local variation, addition, subtraction, whatever, right? So they did an entire exercise based on that, and they came up with a critical edition of Mahabharata. That said, even before that, we've had certain commentaries written on Mahabharata based on which the Gita Press edition comes. It is not based on the critical edition, but it is based on a commentary written in the 17th century. You will see that even the Gita Press version aligns aligns with the critical edition in terms of the story, in terms of the characters. The characters are very, very consistent across. ऐसा नहीं है कि in one Karn is a hero and in the other he's not. Similarly, there is a southern recension, which is the Kumbakonam edition, as that is called. Even in that, the story is very consistent. There is a Bengal version, there is a Bombay edition, and all of these have very, very consistent stories. There might be something here and there, which then critical edition sort of takes care of. So that is what we have. That is what we have as the what we can call the oldest available version or the most consistent version then of Ved Vyasji's Mahabharata. Similarly, we have for Ramayana as well, but right now staying to Mahabharata. So the questions that I had, I realized the only way I can really figure it out if I go back to what Ved Vyasji had to say. And I'm glad I did it because um, a lot of questions I had, I got the answers in the when I started reading the Gita Press Mahabharata. So I read the Gita Press Sanskrit Hindi version. Along with that, I also referred to the BORI, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, the PDF or rather the Sanskrit verses of Bhandarkar Oriental. I also referred to the KM Ganguly translation. So looking at all this, I said, okay, I need to know what is really going on, and I started getting answers to the questions I had. And yes, and it is not all grey. There's a very clear understanding of what is dharma, what is the dharma. There is a reason Yudhishthir is called the Dharmaraj. There is a reason why far as possible we must uphold rules. So that is coming from
Yeah, looks like there is some connection issue. Yeah, we'll wait for a few minutes. I'll try to get in touch with her and see what happened. Okay, I think there was some connection issue. You are on mute, MEG.
Yeah, sorry, I'm actually in a hotel and I think the internet
Okay.
here is not great. Anyways, so sorry, I think Shruti ji is calling, but I think if somebody can tell her I'm in.
Yeah, I'll tell her.
Okay, yeah. So sorry, where was I? Yeah. So then as I said, when I started reading, I realized that there is very clear definition of what is dharma, what is adharma. There is a reason why the heroes are the heroes. There is a reason why who we consider as the anti-heroes or villains, why they are that, what they are. So then the publisher said that we should bring this out. We should talk about what Mahabharata really has, not as fiction, but as what Vedvyas ji has said. So then the first book, Mahabharata Unravelled 1, lesser known facets of a well known history, focused on debunking a lot of myths, a lot of bhrantis, a lot of wrong understanding that we have about the various personalities, characters, events of Mahabharata. But it is written in a chapter wise format. It is written in a story format. That was the idea, to make it easy to read while also bringing out the facets which are not spoken about that much, while also debunking the myths and bringing out what are facets. So I have a lot of gray boxes in the throughout the book, which talk about some manyata, uh, some well or some known aspects of the stories which actually don't belong from, which are not from Vedvyasa's Mahabharata, and if they and where they distort the actual learning from the itihas. So that was the idea of the first book. Mahabharata is more than just the story, though. The first book focused on the key story, the story of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and the many interesting stories that come in there, but related to the core itihas. Yeah, that was the idea. However, Mahabharata is more than just the core story. Mahabharata is called Arthashastra. Mahabharata is called Dharma Shastra. Mahabharata is called Kama Shastra. And in fact, it is also called the Pancham Veda. And what we are also told is Mahabharata is such that dharma artha kama mokshana dharme cha arthe cha kame cha mokshe cha bharat arshavaha yad iha asti tad anyatra yad iha na asti na kutrachit. Anything related to the four purushartha, dharma artha kama, you find it here in Mahabharata. What you find in Mahabharata, you will find elsewhere. What you don't find in Mahabharata, you will not find elsewhere. This is what Vaishampayanji is telling Janmajay when he's actually talking about when he started his public rendition, the first public rendition of Mahabharata in Janmajay's Sarpasatra. So there is a lot more in Mahabharata beyond just the story, the core story of our ancestors. Yeah. It has what is called a discourse on policy, discourse on administration, discourse on leadership, discourse on behavior. And the most famous one actually happens after the war of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. This section is called Shanti Parva, and this is a discussion between Bhishma Pitama and Yudhishthir after the war is over and Bhishma Pitama is lying on the bed of arrows. This discussion, this discourse is so profound because it talks about the various facets of the duties, the kartavyas of the Raja as well as of the citizens. It talks about topics such as taxation. It talks about dandaniti. It talks about taking care of your resource generators, taking care of people who create wealth. Yeah. It talks about how should a Raja conduct himself, how should he appoint ministers, what should be the rule, what should be the qualities to look for in a ministers. In fact, when you read it, you don't even think you're reading, so to say, a religious text. First of all, it's not a religious text, it's a dharmic text, but still it is not what you would expect from Mahabharata. And even while I was writing the first book, I realized that the discourses are so rich that they need to come out, especially today when we're talking about decolonization. As we talk about decolonization, we are saying take away the Western lens. But then what is our lens? What is our lens to policy? What is our lens to administration? What is our lens to organizational behavior? What is our lens to leadership frameworks? Do we have any at all? And yes, we do. As I mentioned, a large part of Shanti Parva talks about Raj Dharma, it talks about duties of the king. Similarly, there is a beautiful discourse on leadership, people behavior, identifying traits of people, vagere, vagere, which comes in Vidur Niti. Vidur Niti is also a part of Mahabharata, which comes before the Yuddha. Shanti Parva, as I said, is after the Yuddha. Vidur Niti is before the Yuddha. This is when the negotiations are still going on. And there is a dialogue between, conversation between Vidur and Dhritarashtra. One night when Dhritarashtra is super tensed and he calls Vidur to talk to him and learn from him about various uh, aspects of leadership and all of that. So that is the discussion, which also is very, very profound. And if you read it, so the second book covers all of this, and I had some youngsters read the book and they were like, ma'am, this is so completely unexpected. We did not think that Bhishma and Yudhishthir and Vidur could talk like how we talk today. Yeah, it's exactly like that. How do you, the way you talk in your corporates, the way you talk in your corporate trainings, you talk about how should a leader behave. It's very similar to that. So there is Vidur Niti, there is Shanti Parva, which cover a major portion of Mahabharata Unravelled too. That's why the first name is lesser known facets of a well-known history, and the other, the subtitle of the second book is the Dharma Discourses, because these are the discourses which deal with dharma, which with various facets of dharma. Then there is a beautiful story which comes in the Vanaparva. So when the Pandavas are are staying in the jungle during their Vanvas, at that time, Markandeya Rishi has come to them, and there are lots of stories being discussed. One of them is called the Vyadha Gita. So in Vyadha Gita, it is there's a Brahmin called Kaushik, yeah, and this Kaushik Brahmin is actually taught dharma. What is the meaning of dharma, and how does dharma, or how does one live dharma in practical life? That is taught to him first by a lady. The indication is given by a lady who's basically a housemaker, and then she directs Kaushik to go to a Vyadha who's basically a meat seller. So here it is a meat seller who is teaching dharma to a Brahman. Just imagine. Yeah, we are told that we were so specified, very so caste based society and hierarchy and all of that. And here a Brahman is actually learning about living dharma from the conduct of a meat seller. So it's a beautiful, beautiful dialogue which comes where the meat seller is actually propounding the various facets of dharma. And he's talking about violence, he's talking about non-violence, he's talking about dealing with parents, he's talking about, rather, how should one behave with parents, he's talking about fulfilling responsibilities. He's also getting into the aspects of Sankhya and Atma and Sharir and all of that. So while I was thinking what is it that I cover and what is it that I don't cover, I have not touched so much on the moksha and the bhakti aspects of the discourses. My focus has been on something which is more practical for anybody to pick up and learn from and start actually, imbibing in our own lives to see if we can take better decisions in our life. Because at the end of the day, that is something, that is the main thing about life, is decision making. Yeah, small or big, it is all about decision making at the end of the day. So how do we make better decisions so that we can live a more fulfilling life? So that's the idea in general of itihas. That's the idea in general of dharma, and these discourses deal with that. Then there is another very interesting short part of Narad, the conversation between Narad Muni and Yudhishthir. Again, it focuses on aspects of Raj Dharma, but it is given in a question format where Narad Muniji comes and he's asking Yudhishthir, are you doing this, are you doing that, are you approachable to your people, are you ensuring that you give yathartha danda, so it shouldn't be too much, it shouldn't be too less, are you ensuring you have a very well um, you have a talented group of ministers and they're doing their work properly, are you leading a very disciplined life? Yeah, are you not sleeping too much, are you ensuring that you wake up on time, are you ensuring that you meet your people regularly, vagere vagere, lots of these things, lots of um, advice, lots of great advice given to a Raja, but in the form of a question. That's also a very interesting chapter. Another smaller one, which I personally really like, it's called the Kama Gita. So Kama Gita comes in the Ashwamedhika Parva. Actually, yeah, the Ashwamedhika Parva. This is after Bhishma Pitama has given up his body. So after Anushasan Parva, he's given up his body, and Yudhishthir is still not out of his glani, not out of his grief, because he feels that he's responsible for the destruction, the complete annihilation of his family. And at that time, then Krishna tells him that your grief is actually coming out of your own sense of extreme attachment. Mamatva, he says. And he says, Mamatva eventually leads to mrityu. Na mamatva iti shashvatam. He says, Mamatva iti mrityu, na mamatva iti shashvatam. Na mamatva is a sense of detachment. To enjoy everything, to accept everything, but still not be detached. Can you develop that sense? Because you don't have that today. You are still in grief, and you're talking about giving up your rajya, where ideally, if you think clearly, you should not be giving up your rajya. The reason you are not understanding is because your buddhi is become kamagrasta. And then he explains the impact of karma on us. And he basically, it is karma personified. There is a story, there is karma itself talking about itself. And he says that I am Sanatana, I am somebody who can never be destroyed. That is what Kam is saying. And then using that, Krishna is telling Yudhishthir to fight the enemies this time, which are in his svabhava, in his own mind, which he cannot see, which are the Shada Ripus of Kam, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mad, Matsarya. And it is, these enemies are not in person, these enemies are not on the battlefield as they were in Kurukshetra, but the fight is going on in his own head. And he will have to ensure how he gets over these enemies which are actually not allowing him to think clearly. So that is a part of the Kama Gita. Very short, but I think it's really beautiful. It's something worth knowing. Some of these things, when we talk about Mahabharata, we never speak about these things. चलो विदुर नीति के बारे में तो फिर भी बात हो जाता है, but some of these छोटूs we don't. Then I end it with the very last part of Mahabharata. So Mahabharata ends with um, Draupadi and Pandavas. They eventually giving up the Rajya after 36 years of war, and they heading towards, as in they're in a Vanprastha, they're walking, and eventually Draupadi and the four Pandavas fall off. And then there's a story, a very beautiful story of how Yudhishthir and that dog, they go to the heaven. Actually, that's the cover of the book as well. And then there is this, usually you would have seen there are these discussions like, Are Duryodhan ko bhi swarg mil gaya. And that actually happens. Yudhishthir goes up and he sees that Duryodhan is sitting in Swarga and he can't find his own brothers and wife. And when asked, eventually he's led to hell. And people are like, okay, is this what Mahabharata means? Like, how is it that Yudhishthir, how is it that the Pandavas, ex Yudhishthir, how is it that they are sent to hell? And how is it that Yudhishthir the Duryodhan is in heaven? What's really going on? So there is a whole, the story doesn't end there. The story doesn't end there. The story ends into us understanding what is the karma siddhanta. How does karma fal that we talk about really work? How does it translate to hell and heaven and stuff like that? And eventually how everybody goes back to their own forms. It's another very beautiful story. It does not end at Duryodhan getting heaven and Pandavas getting hell. It absolutely doesn't end there. So I would request everybody to actually read that part. And that is in a very beautiful way. As I said, it explains how karma siddhanta in Sanatan Dharma really works, or what is that philosophy, what is that darshan of karma siddhanta. Um, so I thought that was a very interesting part and something that has to come out from Mahabharata. What it does not include is, of course, the biggest, the most, is the holiest and the most well-known discourse, which is the Bhagavad Gita, because I think Bhagavad Gita needs its own space to write, and I think I need to still evolve eventually to be able to write something on the Bhagavad Gita. There are greater people who've written on Bhagavad Gita, so let's see. So yeah, that's what it is. Just wanted to tell you briefly about what both the books are, and now happy to answer if there are any questions.
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask questions, please go ahead. You can also type it out in the chat and I can read it out. Uh, Maybe I'll get started. So, if anyone wants to read Mahabharata in English today, what are some of the best books for different levels of people? Not
Yeah.
everyone would big fat book. Maybe for children, youth, and different
So there
stages.
is one Mahabharat, and then again it's in volumes, written by C. Rajagopalachari, which is very close to the original. I think that's very good. Then there is Mahabharat by Kamla Subramaniam, also good enough. To read a good translation in English, but these are abridged versions. Yeah, these are not the whole Mahabharata. These are abridged versions. Uh, a whole full translation of the critical edition is something which Bibek Debroy has done. It is in 10 volumes. I think it's a good place to start. In Hindi, I personally prefer the Gita Press Mahabharat because you also see Gita Press Mahabharat. The best part of it is that you have the Sanskrit shlokas and the translation. But I think it is not available in English as far as I know. It is in Hindi. For Hindi, another good translation of the critical edition is done by Satavadekar Guruji, and you find that in Hindi and the Sanskrit and Hindi, you find that for free on archives.org as well. And of course, you can read Mahabharata Unravelled if you want to. If you have some basic idea of the Mahabharata, but want to understand the facets, the nuances, then I think that's also a good place to read and start.
Yeah, anyone has more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Uh, my question is, what would be a good audiobook of the Mahabharata? Because sometimes people with busy lives do not have time to read, and audiobooks are a good source of accumulating some of the knowledge that they might be missing. I have one book here, which is there in audiobooks, and I wanted to know your opinion on that, if you may, if you may, please.
Sure, sure. Which is it?
Just give me one moment.
So I know that there are YouTube readings of Rajgopalaji's Mahabharata. I know that that one is there. So that I can recommend for sure. People can listen to it. I don't know if the 10 versions uh, of Vivek Debroy is there. Unfortunately, there are not even that many Katha Vachaks speaking on Mahabharat, but there is one, and I think he's really, really good. That is Govind Dev Giri Maharaj. He talks, he has discourses on Mahabharat, which are also very good.
Okay, the one I was talking about is called the Mahabharata, but it's by Krishna Dharma.
I am not aware. I'm not aware.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wants to ask a question?
Thank you.
I think there are some questions in the chat.
Uh,
Actually, do you want to read those
yeah.
out?
The Vyadha incident I recently read in Karma Yoga by Vivekanand. My question is, I heard someone saying the narrator makes the characters look good or bad. Pandavas were not completely good, and then also they are portrayed like that.
First of all, how do we judge good or bad is the question, right? Or what was even Mahabharata trying to achieve? Now, I think there are two, three questions in what you have said here. The narrator makes the people look good or bad. Who is the narrator? Is the question I'd ask. Is it like a court poet who wants to basically suck up to his masters and make them look good? Is that the case? That does happen in history. That does happen in a lot of literature that is written by the court poets. Yeah, they just want to glorify their masters, and there this would be true. But is that really true for Mahabharata? Is the question we really need to ask. Who is who? From whom do we get the Mahabharata? One, it is a rishi writing it, and the term rishi was not given away generously to anybody who wanted it. Rishis were only those who were evolved, who had evolved through knowledge, yeah, who were beyond these attachments of mine and yours, who were beyond the petty good or bad. and who were not biased, who could look at something very objectively. So one, he's a rishi. But second, there is something more interesting. He's a contemporary, he's there. And actually, Ved Vyasji, who is the father of Dhritarashtra? Who is the father of Pandu? It is Ved Vyasji. So Ved Vyasji is actually talking, or he's telling us the story of his own grandchildren. Okay. The good are also his grandchildren. The bad are also his grandchildren. So does he really have to make anybody good or bad? And if he is saying what he's saying, because he's very, very clearly putting it out there, he says, Duryodhan is a Manyumaya Mahadruma. He's that massive tree of rage, whose root is Dhritarashtra, whose trunk is Karna. And he tells us about Yudhishthir, that he's a Dharmamaya Mahadruma. He's the tree of Dharma, whose root is Krishna and whose trunk is Arjun. Yeah. This is what Vedvyas is himself saying. Both Duryodhan and Yudhishthir are his very grandchildren. Okay. Now, even in that, his blood flows through Duryodhan, because Duryodhan is the son of Dhritarashtra. Yudhishthir is not really a son of Pandu, because they are born through Niyog. So, if the narrator had to be biased, say good or bad, who would he be towards and who would he be biased against? So, I think that is something we should really know while we are trying to study our Itihas.
Yeah, I think I have a question. So, one of the interesting characters in Mahabharata is Karna, and
Mm.
interesting enough that people have written books just dedicated to him. He's the anti-hero. Some people, oh, he's the hero, or you know, there is a lot of this moral grayness around him, and some people are fascinated by Karna, like in a positive way. Some people see him as villain. So, I wonder what are your thoughts about this?
See, as I just said, what does Vedvyasji tell us? Vedvyasji tells us that Duryodhan is this tree of rage who is supported essentially by Dhritarashtra and Karna. Okay. So, what does Karna support? Karna supports injustice. Why is he supporting injustice? Because he himself wants the war more than anybody else. Am I saying this? No, this is what you see in Mahabharata. The issue with Karna has become this, that in actual Mahabharata, what Vedvyaji is saying, there is really no confusion about the character of Karna. He's like anybody else. As somebody said, everybody has good qualities, bad qualities, vagare, vagare. But it is not just that which makes a person good or bad. What makes a person good or bad is that in any situation, from what position does a person take his decisions? Is the decision that a person is making only focused on himself, what I like, what I dislike, or can I think beyond myself? Forget the individual qualities, virtues, vices I have. Forget that. How are Duryodhana and Karna taking decisions throughout their life? Are they able to see beyond themselves? Absolutely not. It is they are grasta with matsarya, absolute jealousy and ahankar, which does not allow them to even listen to the good advice that is coming their way from everyone. And they insist on the war, which eventually leads to their own destruction and the destruction of not just their families but two generations of warriors in the yuddha. Right? Insistence, extreme matsarya of just these two people. So Vedvyaji is very clear why he's saying what he's saying, but the whole glorification of Karna is based not on Mahabharata or what Vedvyaji is saying, but on fiction that has been written around Karna. A lot of episodes where he is made the bichara or a victim actually don't exist in Mahabharata. Starting from the very jati of his, Suta. There's a huge misunderstanding that Suta was some discriminated jati. It wasn't. Suta is a mixed jati of a Brahman mother, Kshatriya father, and then their progenies were called Sutas. Over time, some Sutas became Kshatriya, eventually, or some Sutas became Brahman because they were in the middle. They used to be kathavachaks. They used to be history keepers. They used to be warriors. They used to be sarathis. All these were the occupations which the Sutas did. Kichak was a Suta. He was a big warrior. He came from Kekai Desh. The Kekai Desh was it was a country of warriors ruled by a country of Sutas ruled by Sutas. Yeah. We have Ugrashrava Sauti, who tells us the Mahabharata that we know in the version we know that comes from a Kathavachak, a rishi named Ugrashrava Sauti, who also was a Suta. So this whole Suta victimization actually is absolutely baseless. And to justify this victimization, then a lot of stories have been created. For example, story that Karna was refused admission by Dronacharya. That is not the case. Adi Parva is very clear. Dronacharya is a guru of Karna. Karna mentions it multiple times in the Mahabharata that I am the student of both Dronacharya and Parshuram. Yeah, there is a reason he goes to Parshuram because he wants to learn the Brahmastra, and it is only the Brahmastra which Dronacharya has not allowed him to learn. In fact, I cover all of this in a lot more detail in my first book, Mahabharata Unravelled, little known facets of a well known history. So, when the facts themselves are put in order as they are told by Vedvyasji, a lot of this glorification by will stop on its own. The glorification that we see is only because of fiction. Again, does it mean that he was all bad guy and they had no good quality? No, it doesn't mean that. As I said, everybody has good, bad, all of those qualities. But that is not what defines a hero and a villain. What defines a hero and a villain is from what positions do they take decisions, especially those decisions which involve a larger group of people. In that, can they move beyond themselves, or they are taking a decision only from their own bhava? It could be attachment, it could be lust, it could be jealousy, it could be ahankar, all of it. Can they grow beyond that? If they can't, those are who we call villains or who we call anti-heroes. And the heroes, again, it's not as if they don't get confused. We see Arjun getting confused, we see Yudhishthir getting confused, we see they wanting to move towards doing, taking probably wrong decisions as well. But the bhav is not to take that wrong decision out of their own matsar or anything. When they do, they are willing to correct that, they are willing to rectify that, they are willing to do prashchita for that, they are willing to seek help, they are willing to say that Baba, I am your, I don't know, I'm completely confused, I seek your advice. They have that humility to move beyond their own confusion, take help. Why? So that they eventually at least attempt to make the right decision. That is what separates a good person from a bad person. It is not to say that a person has no good qualities at all and the other person has only good qualities. No, that is not what it means. Yeah. So that is the difference between the heroes and the villains as well. That from what bhav are they taking decisions largely.
Yeah, I think we'll take one last question. Anyone wants to ask? Otherwise, there is one question in chat. I can take that.
Yeah, I will say here. Yeah. I have one question.
Yeah.
That by reading Mahabharata, that isn't it a kind of example set for the future, like what we should do in Kali Yuga, just like what Bhim did to Duryodhan and to Dushashan, like he tore apart those two people and drank their blood for dishonoring his wife. So isn't it like a set, an example for the people to follow in
But
Kali
why
Yuga?
just Bhim? Why not others if they were
Say
killed properly?
say it again.
Why are you saying specifically what Bhim did?
Oh,
So I agree
I'm
with you
saying
in
no.
general.
Yeah. No, it is not general. It is very specific. That if somebody does this to your lady, then how you should penalize that person. So that was my, point. Yeah.
Okay. So let me tell you how this goes. Yeah. In general, the purpose of itihas is for us to learn. It is not just for us to pass judgment. So on that, I completely agree with you that itihas is meant for us to take lessons for our own life. Yeah. But the lessons have to be taken holistically, not just single out any one incident. Is again what I'll say. Itihas is a case study for Dharma Shastras, how to live our lives in a way aligned with Dharma. I think we should never forget that. Now let's take this incident of Bhim drinking the blood of Dushasan. This episode, actually, after the Yuddha, Gandhari Ma comes to Bhim. And of course, she's upset. And she's like, why did you do such a gruesome task of drinking the blood of my son? Who does that? And Bhim says, I actually did not drink it. Because I had taken that vow, I had taken that oath in front of everybody, I had to fulfill that oath. I only touched it to my lip. It did not go inside my body. I did not do that. Now, what will you say?
All right.
Because this is Bhim
So
himself saying,
uh,
right? And
I'm
the
not aware of that. Yeah, because what
well,
I
that's
have
because
learned,
we don't talk about it.
yeah,
This is what
what
comes
I've
in.
learned that he drank, and I'm
That's the
not
thing now,
disagreeing that he should not have done. I'm agreeing
sir.
actually that he should have done that. Yeah.
Sir, you can agree, disagree with anything. That is your own concern. Okay. What I'm saying is, if then you are using Mahabharata to take your lesson, at least let's learn Mahabharata for what it is. Then take lessons. Else, we will take half lessons and impose our half understanding on Mahabharata. Right? That is what has been happening till now. And then we end up taking wrong decisions. This is what happens. This is what is happening in Mahabharata. That Bhim is himself saying, I did not drink that blood. Now, does that, would you say, then what is the lesson said? You may have an opinion and say this is how it should be. That's perfectly okay. But that is not what Mahabharata is saying. Just be clear about that. Mahabharata is saying something very different. As far as the Duryodhan incident comes, yeah, what happens in the Duryodhan incident? Bhim again has taken an oath in front of everybody that he will break the Jangha of Duryodhan for what he's done. The Yuddha happens and he's not supposed to hit below the belt. He hits below the belt. Of course, Balramji says, you've broken a rule. This is not right. How could you do that? This is anyaya, vagere, vagere. You know what, interestingly, Krishna says at that time? He says, actually, what happened here? You cannot blame Bhim for it. Because Duryodhan always knew it was not cheating. Duryodhan always knew that Bhim is oath bound, which means he should have taken extra care to not jump the way he did. Because Bhim had announced it, it was not something that happened chupke se. And if Bhim does not fulfill that oath in a battlefield, where will he fulfill it? It has to happen in a battlefield only, right? So, knowing that Bhim is oath bound, Duryodhan jumped the way he did and he exposed himself and gave a chance for Bhim to hit him there. Now, how is it even Bhim's fault? He had to do what he had to do. So that is the other thing, because he was oath bound. If that wouldn't have been the case, it was clearly a violation of the rule. Of course, he also says that who is talking about dharma here? If the people have themselves never lived on dharma, what dharma are we even talking about? Because this discussion comes in the chapter with Karna. When Karna and Arjuna are fighting, and at one point, Karna is like, Arjun, remember your dharma. You cannot hit me when I'm trying to pull out my veer and all of that. And Krishna is like, wow, very nice. Now you are remembering dharma. Very, very nice. Where was your dharma when you guys insulted Draupadi the way you did? Where was your dharma when you killed Abhimanyu the way you did? Vagere, vagere. And there's a whole thing. And he says, have you ever understood dharma? Have you lived by dharma? What are you calling dharma to protect you? Dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitah. That is what he says. But Krishna is not saying that break rules at the fall of a hat. That is not the lesson of Mahabharata. The lesson of Mahabharata is this, if at all, dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitah. So, as far as possible, we should align with the do's and don'ts. As far as possible, we should live in accordance with the rules and the norms set of the society. But if it comes to that extent where the same norms start giving rise to more injustice, then is a time to say, okay, we need to relook at it, and maybe at this point this doesn't make sense, not otherwise. Because otherwise the society will fall into anarchy if everybody starts breaking rules as and when they wish. So if the takeaway from Mahabharata is this, that break rules as you wish, then that is not right. That is a sure shot strategy to put your society into adharma, to put your society into anarchy. Because who decides what is the right time? It was Krishna. Do we have the Krishna buddhi? Who can claim to have that yogastha buddhi, that objective buddhi of Krishna, to say this is the time where I can take some leeway with rule? If we all start using our dimags and start breaking rules as we wish, then the society will only go into patan, will only go into downfall, and that is not the lesson of Mahabharata to learn. This is not even the lesson which Krishna wants us to learn. And hence, knowing itihas for what it is very, very important. Not just based on fiction, not just based on kahi suri batein, and also not based on what we want to derive out of it. Let's be objective, know itihas for what it is, and then take lessons from it.
Yeah, just like Dhritarashtra was not listening to anybody. So that means a ruler was, the policy less, lawless. So in that case, what the people should do, they have to do something on their own, just like Bhim did. So that's my point.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have run out of time. So thank you, MEG, for spending your Saturday and a very enlightening talk. We can, continue the discussion on our Substack and other forums. I want to thank all participants for attending this, and the next event. To follow up with the next event, make sure you follow our WhatsApp channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as you can subscribe to our newsletter so that you'll receive notifications about the future events. And you can always comment on our YouTube to continue this same discussion forward. And thank you, Amiji. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Namaste. Jai Shri Ram.